Hi. So it's 17 degrees in the morning. It's rainy, it's cloudy. So grab a hot drink and let's talk art. This video is dedicated to last month's drawing challenge #Mermay. If you haven't heard of it, it's basically this challenge where you have to come up with 31 different mermaid drawings for the whole month of May. So Mermay. Right. Some artists have, of course, modified the rules to suit their circumstances. So have I. These are my own rules besides the 31 drawings for the month. One is that there should be no repeat designs. There are 31 days, so I might get tempted to draw the same mermaid but with a different angle, with a different pose. But no, that's part of the rules. No redrawing mermaid concepts or designs. The second one is late posts or late uploads are fine, but I should try not to draw things in advance. So I cannot stockpile on drawings and then upload them accordingly. And the third one is that each drawing should have at least a story behind it, not a plot per se, but it should answer the question, why did you draw it like that? And the answer should not be because I wanted a mermaid that looked like this. So it should not just be a design concept, so it should not just be an aesthetic thing, but it should have a little tiny story behind it. So let's check if I was able to follow those 3 simple additions to the rules. Now, this will be a long video. There are 31 drawings to talk about, and so strap in. And if you stay with me for the whole duration, I thank you in advance. So this is my first drawing for Mermay. As you can see, it might not look like the mermaid you are used to. So a lot of people expect mermaids to look like Ariel from The Little Mermaid, just a perfectly human half from waist up, and then just a simple fish tail from the waist down. However, my mermaid influences range from Harry Potter 4, the book and the movie, and then of course Guillermo del Toro and Mike Mignola's Hellboy. So Abe Sapien, obviously, and then Pet Shop of Horrors, right? So those are my mermaid influences growing up. So obviously, those are the kind of mermaid designs that I'm comfortable with, and those will be what my mermaids will look like. The second one kind of breaks that statement almost immediately. This is called negative space. So I wanted to draw a mermaid, but the highlight is in its environment, not the mermaid itself. And this basically emphasizes how recognizable the mermaid silhouette is, especially for a lot of people. If you see this silhouette, immediately you think of a mermaid. However, in order for me to achieve that, I had to come up with a very familiar design. This is of course based more of the recognizable concept of a mermaid, so a woman with a tiny waist and then a simple fish tail. The third one I call the Fiji mermaid. Of course, this is in reference to P.T. Barnum's hoax, The Fiji Mermaid, where he acquired a mermaid from another person, but this of course is not real. This other person that P.T. Barnum bought it from stitched together a monkey and a fish to create this false evidence for the existence of mermaids. And so this is my interpretation of P.T. Barnum's hoax. Prime it with a fishtail. Of course, it doesn't look like the Fiji mermaid originally. It's not an emaciated corpse, but here it's the Fiji mermaid in its environment, fully alive and swimming through the water. The next drawing is another subversion of the established mermaid image. So this one is actually not completely my idea. We have it in the Philippine culture. We call them shokoy. So it's still half fish, half man as a concept, but this time the halves are different. So from the very beginning, I knew that I was going to be drawing shokoy. However, I did not yet know how it would look like. In the back of my mind, I always flash back to the Japanese kappa. But that's the kappa, not the shokoy. But on this day, I was having breakfast and it was fish, and I looked at the fish and then it hit me. That was how it was going to look like. So this drawing right here is based on what my breakfast looked like that time. And so the next drawing is called Trident. Obviously in reference to Poseidon's fork in the middle of the drawing. And this was originally intended as a challenge for me to draw more than one mermaid in a single piece. how many mermaids can I make within a day. And I was able to come up with at least 6. And then eventually this became like the beginning of a story. So there will be sequels to this drawing in the coming pages. This is part 1, the trident. And before I move on to the next drawing, I should mention that this was completed and photographed in a Jollibee. This was because on that day we didn't have power at home, so I knew that if I was going to upload it in time, I had to be able to finish it and then photograph it before coming home. And I went to a Jollibee and then finished it there and then took a photograph and uploaded it. Anyway, that's it for Trident. We'll see the sequels to this drawing in the next few pages. So the next piece I call the Quest Giver. This mermaid stretches how far I can play around with the concept half human, half fish. The human half is basically just the face, and it just looks like a mask parodying a face, and then the rest of it is just massive fish body. And the story for this picture is that a person, perhaps magically enhanced to breathe underwater, receives a quest from this mystical, human-faced giant fish. And there. So I mentioned earlier in the video that my influences for mermaid designs were not Disney, but Guillermo del Toro, Mike Mignola, and then of course the Harry Potter mermaids, and then Pet Shop of Horror. So this drawing right here is directly inspired by a scene from Pet Shop of Horrors. I have not read the manga, but I have seen the 4-part OVA that was aired when I was a kid. So it was aired in Halloween, and I remember I was around 7 or 8 years old and I saw it. The mermaid story there was so compelling to me. It starts off as kind of like Little Mermaid love story, but then it ends with the guy being headless or being bodiless with just his head left in the end of that story arc. This one captured my imagination so much because it was not just the mermaid love story that we know, but it basically shows us a different angle of the mermaid. It's a more predatory characteristic. The mermaid does not just sing for love or for companionship, but she is singing because she is hungry and she needs to feed. So the next drawing just basically continues my interpretation of the predatory mermaid. So here we have a mermaid who's just finished feeding. And what I really like about this mermaid is that every time I look at it, or while I was drawing it, especially after I finished the face, when I look at it, I feel like she's talking to me and I have to respond in her language. So it's like that. Anyway, so that's one more predator mermaid. So the next one continues that train of thought. So here we have a monster pulling up mermaid costume that looks more human or more appealing. Originally it was just that. It was just this monster who has evolved the capability of putting on a human looking costume so that it could get food. But it could be interpreted metaphorically in a lot of things. When we deal with people, situations, when we leave the house, we put on these personas, or we adapt personalities that might be a bit different than what people know, or what this group of people know than what this group of people know. And a lot of people feel guilty about that because they feel like they're not being true to themselves, or other people would feel resentful towards that person because they present themselves differently to other people, to other situations. The feelings are of course understandable, but putting on a persona to deal with people, to deal with different situations is normal. You have to compartmentalize who you are depending on the situation or depending on the person who you are communicating with that time. Alright, so here is one of my early favorites in the series. I call it Aging Gracefully. This plays around with the question, what would mermaids look like if they grow really old? Or what would the oldest mermaid look like? She is, of course, a traditional mermaid. She's very pretty in her youth, much like Ariel perhaps, but now she's very old, perhaps near death. I had fun drawing the wrinkles in and the emaciated body, and then just the expression on her face that she is very close to death. This is also me getting comfortable with finer tips of pens. I'm usually more comfortable with thicker nibs, but I'm quickly realizing that finer tips of pens, just like 0.1 or even lower than that, is actually very, very versatile when it comes to drawing, especially when it comes to detailing. The next one plays around with the question, what would mermaid babies look like? We saw Melody in The Little Mermaid 2, and she looks pretty human because, of course, her mom became human. But what would Ariel's mermaid babies look like? They would probably look like this. Ugly little devils that look like Chanak with fishtails. And yeah, and that would be their dad being eaten, because males in the animal kingdom are usually only good for sex and food for babies. Okay, so the next one is kind of like a fan art in a way. So this one is based on Dean Francis Alfar's Six from Downtown. It's a short story found in his collection of stories, A Kite of Stars and Other Stories. To be honest, I don't really remember what Six from Downtown is about. But what I do remember is that this character, at the very beginning of the story, is at the market, and then he's describing these things that he sees. I'm not even sure if the narrator is a boy. Anyway, he's enumerating these things that he sees in the market, and then of course it's just normal food, normal things you would find. And then he mentions that he spotted fresh sirena, and the way he mentions it is so casual, implying that it's a normal thing, that sirena or mermaids are just laid out on a slab to be bought and cooked and eaten. So here is some grilled sirena for you. Yum. Further exploring the question, what would babies look like? Here is a follow-up of that. What would a mermaid giving birth look like? So I imagine it to look like this, a very grotesque image of just tadpoles bursting out of a pregnant mermaid's belly. So yeah. Anyway, one of my friends said that, why does she look like she's in so much pain? And that's a weird question because I will never experience childbirth. I can't, biologically cannot. But I know that childbirth is a painful experience. No male experience will ever compare to the pain of childbirth. So of course she should be in agony. I'm not even sure if her agony is properly represented here in my drawing. The next one is the only drawing that's based off of a request. So there have been a couple of requests for me to draw this mermaid or that mermaid for them, and although I stored them in the back of my head just in case I ran out of ideas, but this is the only one that I actually got around to drawing for the person who requested it. It was my cousin, so there's family bias there, and she said that she had a dream about a mermaid who sunk a pirate ship just so she could get married to the pirate that she apparently likes or fell in love with. And this is my interpretation of her dream, and I'm very, very happy that she liked it so much. And she liked it so much that I cannot quote what she said because she liked it really, really much. So the next drawing I call Ningen, or Ningen. I'm not sure how to say it, but I'm sticking with Ningen. If you've heard of that name before, you know that it's a Japanese cryptid. It's basically just this giant humanoid creature. It's usually portrayed as white, like pearl white, and then massive, and then it's walking through the ocean like a person would in a forest. And just imagining a giant creature walking through the depths of the ocean is pretty much a very mind-blowing thing to conceive, because what if, right? The next drawing is actually the sequel to the Trident. I did mention that it's part of a series. This is the second one. I call it Victra, and I call her that because at that time I was still hungover from reading the Red Rising trilogy, where Victra is a character there, and she's one of my favorites. So I'm naming my mermaids, one of my mermaids, after her. So this drawing continues what we've just seen from the drawing Trident. So one of them finally reaches the fork of Poseidon and claims possession of it, and we can see the power of the trident surging through her body, electrocuting her. It was really fun drawing an electrocuted mermaid, because you kind of get to experiment on what its skeletal structure would look like. I imagine it to be very closely human, of course, and then just fish bones towards the at the tail. So I have not drawn electrocuted characters much, so I'm pretty happy with what it looked like, of how it looked like though, although it looks very comic-y, but that's fine. That's within my style anyway. So this one didn't start out like this. The original idea for this day's drawing was that for me to create like a dissecting scenario where it's a biology class and one kid is just dissecting a mermaid instead of a frog on a dissection platter. Eventually, I abandoned that idea in favor of a gigantic mermaid. I think I'm more attracted to the idea of massive half human, half fish creatures instead of just tiny ones. Anyway, so here we have a Gulliver's Travels like scenario where a giant creature is tied down by tiny people. I call this piece the discovery of the century, and I imagine it would be if we suddenly find a massive half human, half fish creature washed up on our shore that would completely blow the minds of the scientific community, especially since it might rewrite what we know about creatures of the sea. So here we have part 3 of the Trident series. So we start with Trident and then Victra and then of course this one. So this is called Poseidon. This is not the first time I've drawn this character. This is actually the 3rd iteration of this character, and here is my reinterpretation of that character. So in this series, Poseidon should have been drawn at an earlier date, so to establish him as the owner of the trident and all that, but it didn't feel right at that moment to draw him yet, and on this day it did finally feel right for me to actually draw him. In the earlier versions of him, it was just me playing around with coming up with a Frankenstein monster of a mermaid. So he was not posed as a god, and Poseidon of course is a god, so he should look like one, or at least he should be posed as one. The previous version is just him riding whale's fins, and what's godlike about that? So here I made a conscious effort to present him in a divine pose, so to speak, so with his arms spread like in welcome or in presentation of his power, with his trident worn as a crown and his tentacles splayed out and then displaying his lobster claws. There. The next one is just me playing around with the idea, what would mermaid houses look like? And this is what I came up with. So here the focus is less on the actual mermaid, so it's just a tiny mermaid there, but on where it would live under the sea. So I imagined a giant fish skull, or just a normal fish skull, and then we have a very very tiny mermaid living in that fish skull, and then of course it would have its garden, and now I'm just left imagining what would the inside of this house look like if this is what the outside looks like. So I'm very happy with it, and I kind of want to live in it now. The next one I call Merfa, simply because it's two mermaids copulating. So typically we would imagine scenes where two characters are having sex as, you know, sexual, romantic, and all that. I wanted this to be as animalistic as possible. So we have the female mermaid just grabbing onto the faceless male mermaid and then just screaming. In the animal kingdom, a lot of females consume their male mates right after mating. So here we expect that after they're done, the female mermaid is going to eat the male mermaid. And I just realized that this is actually just the part 1 of a trilogy as well. So we have this is the part 1, and then we have part 2 being the giving birth, the mermaid giving birth, and then part 3 would be the babies eating a human being. So yeah, apparently there's another series in this challenge besides the trident one. So here, this is one drawing that I wish I could have drawn on a bigger canvas, but since I was sticking to the idea of drawing every mermaid here on this sketchbook, I drew it here anyway. So the idea here is there's a community of people who have stayed on this island for a long time, that they have had time to build buildings and all that, but they do not know they are living on the dorsal fin of a mermaid. One friend pointed out that it looked like a star whale, and yeah, it was. So a star whale is basically this creature from Doctor Who. It's one of the first adventures with Amy Pond and the 11th Doctor, where an entire community in space are riding a whale. Yeah, it's kind of inspired by that story. And another friend pointed out that the design itself looks like Nina. It's the girl from Full Metal Alchemist, the one the one who becomes a chimera, the one who says Edward. Yeah, so it was a conscious decision for my mermaid to look like Nina. mainly because I like how the hair looks, and then it just kind of fell into place, and I'm like, yes, that's how I want her to look like, because she is a tortured soul, just like the star whale, and just like Nina, and just like this mermaid becoming a home to thousands of people who do not even know that they are living atop a living creature. The next one just started out as this concept of a mermaid silhouetted by moonlight, and that's it. And then eventually it became just this something more. So it became this drawing of highlighting the deceptiveness of a mermaid, because we can see, yes, okay, it's a very fine pose, it's very elegant, but then we see that the island that she's resting on is actually a pile of skulls. So here is another one of my interpretations of the deceptive nature of mermaids, and there will be more. I think this one is the tiniest version of a mermaid I have come up with, because this one plays around with the idea, what if we also had mermaid pets, like decorative koi on koi ponds? So the next one is a more conscious attempt at symbolism. So here is a piece I call There Are Dreamers and Then There Are Achievers. Now, literally taken, this is a girl who is not only dreaming of becoming or looking like a mermaid, but she's actually doing something about it by, you know, stitching her legs together to resemble a mermaid's tail. Now, metaphorically speaking, this could be taken as a symbol for people who actually do something about their dreams. And sometimes fulfilling your dreams is not the prettiest thing to do. It will be very messy, it will be painful, it will be bloody, but that's sometimes what it costs to fulfill your dreams. A friend of mine supplemented that interpretation by saying that this could be seen as people not really appreciating what other people go through in order for them to reach, or in order for them to achieve something. So people would usually not see the mess or the blood behind your efforts. So because of that oversight, they end up stepping on you, or they end up underappreciating you. And that's a very good supplement. Thank you so much. So here is the final piece that I was able to add to this sketchbook. So this is number 26, I think, or 25, one of those. I call it Goddess. And this plays with the question, what would a mermaid religious icon look like? So I came up with this, a 6-armed goddess with 3 tails. So as you can see, this is obviously based off of existing religious iconography, like the 6 arms and the patterns and all that. And yeah, just a mermaid version of it. So those are all the drawings I could manage to fit into the sketchbook, and unfortunately I had to move on to a different pad in order for me to complete the series. So it's a bigger one. So it's kind of a good thing, because I was able to work with a bigger canvas, especially for the last pieces or last mermaids for this month, and I think that's still appropriate. So the first one I was able to complete on this pad I call Punishment, and I call it that because as I was drawing it, I caught myself adding so many details, erasing, and then modifying, and then doing a lot of things that I do not really need to do for this drawing. And then I thought to myself, are you punishing yourself for some reason? And the answer was, of course, yes. This is Mermay number 26, but I drew this on the 28th of May, so I was already 3 days behind, and I needed to do 26, 27, and 28. But then I found myself adding details instead of just finishing it so that I can move on to number 27. So yeah, here's Punishment. It looks pretty badass. It looks like a kaiju, and it looks really good. The next one I call Cave Maiden. Another one in my ongoing contention that mermaids should not be trusted. So the mermaid itself is not dangerous. She is just a pretty face attracting a man into a cave, but then we see that the cave is not just a cave, but it's actually the mouth of a giant creature getting ready to devour its unsuspecting victim. Right, and the next one is another fan art, my second fan art actually, and this is actually Ursula from The Little Mermaid. She's one of my favorite villains, actually favorite characters across all characters, not just villains, alongside Scar and Dom Claude Frollo. Anyway, so here is my interpretation of Ursula, and I might be redrawing this or just coloring it in, just so I could spend more time with her, because she is really one of my favorite characters. And the next one, number 29, is, I call it Treasure. So she is designed specifically to look fearsome. So she does not have the human features except the hair. So she looks more like a shark with centipede legs, so much more like a dragon protecting treasure. And that was what was my intention. So she is not luring men into their deaths, but she is trying to keep people away from the treasure that she is protecting. So there. So if ever anyone wanders into her cave, she has her powerful tail, her claws, and of course her sharp teeth. And the next one, I call her Diva. Another highlight to the predatory nature of sirens or mermaids. So this one sings and then of course lures men to dive into the water and then drown. Admittedly, although I really like how it looks, this is my least favorite mermaid. Mainly because throughout my drawing her, in the back of my mind, I keep telling myself, hurry up, hurry up, hurry up. Because I needed to plan and then execute the finale Mermay for this month. And the pressure was there the entire time I was drawing it, so there are some lines that did not work out properly. But all in all, I think it still tells a pretty good story. Speaking of the final piece, here it is. So of course, this is not the actual final piece. This is just the sketch of it, which I scanned and then uploaded onto my computer and then drew over it there. Right, so I did actually do a speed draw video of me making, of me doing just that. Anyway, here is what it looks like in the end. I call it Versus. So here is the culmination of not just the Mermay series as a whole for the whole month, but it's also the finale of the ongoing story arc that I mentioned. So this one started with Trident, of course, Victra, and then Poseidon, and then it ends with Versus. So here we see Victra, the one who finally gets Poseidon's trident. So I wanted to do this drawing much like the fight between the Archangel Michael and the devil, where we have the Archangel Michael here trampling the devil. Of course, here we have the positions reversed. So here we have Victra, a plain-looking mermaid. So she's not one of my more elaborately designed mermaids, and that's intentional. She just looks plain with just basic green color. And then we have Poseidon, a very elaborately designed creature who is, of course, a god with so many appendages that can help him crush his enemies. And all Victra has is her determination and of course the trident. The entire process of making this one took up 4 hours, 4.5 hours maybe, including the sketch. But the entire time I was doing it, I did not even notice the passage of time. And I'm really happy with how it looked like. It's such, I mean, the fact that it's such a far cry from the original sketch, which is this one, and then that I was able to make it look like this in the end. So yeah, I'm pretty proud of it, and I'm glad that I was able to make a finale that deserves to be a finale for the series. So that's all of it for this Let's Talk Art video. It's gone on too long, I think, but I really do love talking about what I have managed to accomplish for last month at least. But yeah, how about you? Were you able to participate in Mermay as well? Did you come up with 31 drawings, or did you at least have one drawing just dedicated for the whole month? What were your modifications to the rules, challenges, all of that? Let's talk about it down in the comments. All right. And after leaving a comment, don't forget to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't already, especially since later this month I will be uploading my video on the Mask of June. Make sure to subscribe so that you will be able to watch that video as well. And I swear it will be much shorter than this one. Alright, so my body is craving for more solid food now, so I have to go have breakfast. Look forward to the next video, but until then, bye. Thanks for watching.